Hey, welcome to the OT Asset Management Weekly webcast, where we talk about all things OT asset management each Tuesday at 9:30 a.m. Eastern. This session is going to be about adding metadata, adding data to your OT asset inventory and how to do that manually. Before we go into details, let me remind you that you can download some collateral on our website on the resources page. So there is this OT asset inventory handbook where we give you some background, some context on all the things that are important for an OT asset inventory in order to make it useful, which brings us to today's topic. In an ideal world, we would be able to collect all the many data points that you want to have and need in an OT asset inventory automatically. But that's fiction. In the real world, you do need to make some manual edits in order to make the asset information useful. And that is the important link. So the metadata that you add ties the data that we can automatically discover to use cases. This is what's going to make it useful. And there are so many stuff in there, so many details that you just cannot collect automatically. And that's the reality. So that means if the platform that you're using, whatever platform that may be, something like an OT threat detection system, does not support manual edits very well and in a very easy manner, its utility is very much limited. Okay, so let's look what you can do in OTbase, how we can manually add data. So this is something that you probably know already. This is the devices inventory in OTbase, where every single row represents one specific device. Color codes represent different device types. So for example, a clock will always be color coded in green or to whatever color code you set that type. So let's just single out one device and let's click on edit. So you see all these little buttons here. That looks cute. All those buttons that all do useful things. And now we want to edit that particular entry for this device. And one of the most important things is this general section up here, where we can specify the geolocation, the OT system association, device group, process, and process location. I'll just quickly go over those. One of the more interesting aspects here is the OT system association. This is where you tell OTbase of which functional unit this particular device is a part of, okay? So that could be somewhere in here in that BIW, like in this trunk section. I think that was the default that we used here. And then just like that. So the alternatives that you can pick from in that drop down, they are pre-populated by your location directory. And we don't talk about the location directory in this session. We will do that at some other time. Then we have a device group. This can be anything that for your context makes sense or add some information that's important for you, right? So you see there are some samples here from the oil and gas industry. Doesn't match our present sample, but just to give you an idea, okay? So this is all user defined here, all those device groups. It could also be OT versus IT, whatever makes sense to you. Then let's skip the hardware, because hardware, that is in almost every case, it's discovered automatically. So you wouldn't do any changes here. But this is a little bit more interesting here, the detailed section, where one of the most important fields is this description field. Why is that so super important? Because this is the place where you tell other users about the specific function of that device. So let's just add something like trunk quality control system, okay? We don't want to edit the name, so that by default would be the host name, and it's just some random gibberish here because we want to obfuscate some data. Resources, we don't care about that. That's also usually filled automatically. Installation date, you can set that if you want to, if that's important for you. Documentation, this field may contain a link to an existing documentation system. And so that would usually be a URL, and that URL in the device profile in OTbase is automatically made clickable. So if you have an existing documentation server, then you would insert the URL to the documentation of that particular device, and then with one click you can go from OTbase to that other page in your documentation server. Manufacturer data, it's also usually set automatically if you're running Ethernet IP devices. Serial number is covered automatically, automatic. Policy, this is where you could associate one of the policies that you have identified or that you have defined for your systems, such as must not have flash on OT devices. I don't get into policies here. We will do that in a different session. It's just OTbase gives you a very simple way to determine if your devices are, if the configuration of your devices, if that is compliant with corporate policies, configuration policies, okay? Criticality, that's a very important one. So here you can tell OTbase and other users if that is a critical system or not. So let's just insert quality here. And this may surprise you. In OTbase, you don't simply use a number or something like high, low, because that number alone will have other users wonder, well, why is that system critical? And for that reason, we suggest that you specify why a given device is critical, and you just type it in there. Okay, so here we use quality. So, no, this is critical for quality, and we know what happens. So this is in our hypothetical automobile plant. If a quality inspection is unreliable, then the manufacturer might be in all kinds of legal trouble. They might have to recall a batch of products, etc. So therefore, we say, oh, this is a critical system, a critical device, and it's critical because of quality reasons. It has to do with quality. If I wanted to also express some assessment like, oh, this is highly critical, super critical, I could even do so by adding :2 or :3 or whatever your metric provides. So that's totally up to you. If I don't add anything, this is treated as it's critical. And then if you add :2, it will be, that's more than critical, that's highly critical. And the scale that you use depends totally on yourself. Safety, that would be a safety certification, something like SIL 2. We don't have that in our sample. Security, that's another interesting one. That's the target security level that many of you know from IEC 62443. So you can set that security level for an individual device, or you can set it for multiple devices for a system, whatever makes sense for you. The lifecycle stage of a device, you can change that to something like testing. The purview level, well, this is usually set automatically where we can determine it automatically in OTbase. So in this case, we could simply say, well, that's purview level 3. Here you can set a zone that also relates to IEC 62443. If you're using the zones concept, you can set a zone here. Usually you would do that at the network level where this particular device is associated with, so the network that it belongs to. And then if you do that, it's automatically inherited by the devices on that network. So that would be the recommended way of action. Warranty, also a field that is automatically detected if you are running Ethernet IP on that device. Otherwise, you can set it manually. So that already gives you an idea what we're talking about here. Again, the most important field for practical reasons is this one here, the description, because you want to let others know what the damn thing actually does, what its function is. This is what the description should tell other users, right? And that is very important because different from IT systems, you cannot tell the function of a given Windows box or a given PLC, given RTU, given drive, just by looking at its make and model or network association. You just don't know. So therefore, the SME, which is usually a control engineer, would set this description manually. The best practice in this case would be to import this information from existing documentation, such as an Excel table, such as a spreadsheet, and I will get back to that later. So for now, let's just assume I have to manually input all those data points. Okay, next section here is tags. You can slap any number of tags on a device. So let's just use test tag here. You see how that goes in OTbase. Down here is a list of available tags that have been predefined by, let's just say, another user or the administrator. And you can select any of these tags just by clicking on them, and then they will move over here. As you see, you can also assign a color code to your tags. If that makes you feel any better, just go ahead and do that. Then the other important area is this extended section. Oh, now it's getting really interesting. So you can bet that no standard software product, when it comes to OTS and inventory, would already contain all the different fields that you need or that you would want to have to represent given use cases, different qualifications of your devices, etc. So therefore, the capability of your platform to let you enhance the existing data model with custom fields is super important. And it's also super important that those custom fields are presented in a user-friendly manner rather than just as some JSON gibberish, right? And this is what you see here. I will show you in a couple of minutes how you can define custom fields in OTbase, but for now, let's just look at those that are already defined. So here you have a comments field, if that is something that makes sense for you. Here we have mean time to recover in hours. Then we have a sample enumeration field, just to give you an idea what you can also do in OTbase. So you can, for your custom field, you can define, oh, there are some predefined values for this field, and those are blue, green, and red. So let's just pick red here in this case. Then we have an SAP equipment ID. Oh, and then you could add all kinds of other fields that you need, okay? Okay, finally, what I want to show you is this section down here. It's called Files. And you can already guess what it does. It allows you to attach files to a given device entry. And the way you make that happen is you just click on here, and then you can select any of those files here, click on Open, and there are your files that are now attached to this device entry. Now, again, we are in edit mode, and as an end user, you would not go to this pane here in order to inspect all the characteristics of a device. What you would do is you want to check the device profile. So let's just save all our edits. And now for our sample device, where do we have it? Down there. So if you want to look at the device profile that contains all the information that is known about a device, we just do a double click here. And you see the the effect of our edits, okay? So you see our description. This is the trunk quality control system. You see the criticality. Anytime this field has a value, it's exposed in orange in order to draw attention, because you want people to make, well, this is a critical system. That also has an impact on the way that OTbase calculates risk, as an example. So any criticality for a device will bump up the risk score. So we will look at that in another session where we talk about the vulnerability management functionalities. So that has consequences if you set a criticality value. Then you see the target security level, you see the purview level, you see the zone. We didn't set any value there. You would also use the zone concept when you are working within the conceptual framework of IEC 62443. Let's check out this extended field. You see our sample enum field is set to red, and the MTTR and SAP equipment ID, we didn't change those. Here is our test tag. Then we have the hardware information where we didn't change anything. All of that is determined automatically. Software is discovered automatically. And here are the files. Okay. And if I would double click on either of those, they would open in the respective application. So very convenient, very easy to use. By the way, you see that there is this header here that spells out device files. Why is that? Well, because file attachments can also be inherited. So if you would slap a file, if you would attach a file, for example, to the OT system that this device is a part of, I think in our in our sample, it's the trunk section of the body in white 15 system, then they would also be exposed here, and you would see all those are associated with the system. That could be some overall system documentation, whatever. Okay, so I think that gives you an idea how easy it is to add information to a given asset in OTbase. Most of the data will usually be discovered automatically. All the technical details, such as network association, network addresses, MAC addresses, then you have all the make and model serial numbers, etc. That's all fine, but it's never enough. So you will always need to add metadata. And then the question becomes how easy and how powerful that actually is. Let's look at the next step. You can do bulk edits. So for example, let's just say I want to make some modifications for those 3 Windows PCs here. So you see I can multi-select devices just by using left click or shift left click, control left click. And then when I click on edit, I can also make changes here. So when I now click on tags, I could say, well, just add tags or override tags or even remove tags. And just set this one here as an example and then click on save. And now any of those devices has this new tag attached to them. Okay, let's quickly check that. Okay, that was the wrong one. So check this one. There is my new tag. Good. So now let's talk about those extended fields. How are they defined? You define the extended fields here in this extended section, where you see a couple of tabs. So this gives you an idea already. Well, you can define a lot of stuff in here, a lot of metadata dimensions, right? You remember this one here, the device groups, where I told you, this is from the oil and gas industry. And well, in this case, it's hierarchical. So you can really go crazy here with your metadata dimensions. You can make it quite complex and granular if that makes any sense for your applications. But let's get back to the custom fields. These are defined here. And let's just add a new field. Let's call that my new device field. You see, I can define a field for various areas in OTbase. It can be associated with a device, with a location, with a hardware product, software product, a system, which would be something like a machine line, or even with users. So let's stick with devices. I can add a description here. That description is then shown as a tooltip when you hover over the field name in order to help new users. And here you have a choice of either free text or selection. Let's just say selection. And now I can make my enumerations here. Let's just say I'm using 1 and I'm using 2. Okay, and that would then be exposed in the drop down when anybody would want to change or add a value. So they would only be presented with these 2 choices. The other thing that you can do is you can restrict the scope of an extended field to a specific device type or specific device category. So I could say this particular field here should be applied to all actuators, which contains robots, pumps, drives, etc. Or I can say, no, let's only use it for drives and pumps for whatever reason. Okay, and then that field would not be exposed when you want to make any changes in the edit dialog that I've shown you earlier for other device types. And that enhances usability. Because then users don't get confused. Well, what shall I do with that field? It doesn't resemble anything of importance for this device type. So, for example, you have to find a field that only makes sense for controllers, for PLCs, and it's exposed for everything, including network switches and desktops. And then users get confused, and we don't want that to happen. Good. So this gives you an idea how simple it is to extend the data model in OTbase in different dimensions. Okay. Then the other thing I want to point out here is that all the data that we have discussed can also be imported. So I was a little bit off when I told you in the beginning, no, we were talking about manual edits. Yes, you can do those manual edits as I have shown you. But certainly if you realize, well, guys, we already have this information sitting somewhere, usually in an Excel table, right? Then you can import that damn Excel table. And maybe the most frequent use of this capability is when it comes to these description fields, which document the specific purpose of a given device, such as trunk quality control system. Okay, guess what? Many times some control engineer has already put that information into some Excel file along with the IP address, maybe the host name, maybe the make and model. Okay, so in other words, you can use your existing legacy OT asset inventories, your existing legacy documentation, and enrich the data in OTbase. So in order to do that, let's go back to the product. You go to import, very intuitive, and you click on the Excel tab, and here you see you can import device information, location data, and system data. Very simple. So you would go to that import devices section right here, pick your Excel table, bang, there is your information. So no manual input necessary. How damn cool is that? And lastly, you can also use the REST API for these purposes. So now we are looking at the online documentation of the product. Just as a reminder, the full product documentation of OTbase is publicly available online. You just go to support.langner.com, and this is what you will be looking at. There you pick integrators and developers, and there you have a fantastic documentation of the OTbase REST API. Okay, and it comes with all the bells and whistles, with the Postman collection, with videos. With the only thing that's missing is a song, like how cool the OTbase REST API is. And what I want to point out here is that you can just update all the fields that we have discussed using the REST API. Okay, so this allows for automation. Just in case you don't have your metadata in an Excel table, but you have it somewhere else in a text file, who knows, then you would be able to write a Python script and just bang, push it all into OTbase inventory. Okay, so that's what I wanted to point out today. Remember, you can download that OTbase inventory handbook from our resources page if you want to have some additional details. And now we have 5 minutes left for questions, but usually you guys are too shy to ask any questions. You can also put in a comment, oh, this is all crap. We are doing it so much better. Let's just have an honest discussion here. But I think what you're getting here is why you need all those additional capabilities in order to make your OT asset inventory useful. That is a huge difference, right? It all comes to utility. If you only have a table with a bunch of IP addresses and with a bunch of make and model and some question marks, they're unknown. We don't know exactly what software is on that Windows box, right? Then it's not really useful. But the same thing applies to all the additional metadata that you have to add manually. There is no way around that. So just as an example, the criticality of a device cannot be determined automatically. The specific function of a device, like this is the quality control system for the trunk station, that cannot be determined automatically. And you need that information, otherwise your asset inventory isn't useful. And then the critical question becomes, how easy is that to provide this information? What can you do with this information? This is something that I haven't even touched today. Maybe we will do that at some other time, where I show you, well, what you can do with criticality, for example, what you can do with those other data points that you can enter either manually or automatically. So that is what I wanted to discuss today. Feel free to send us any comments later on. Also tell us which topics you would like us to cover in these webinars, and we will certainly take that into consideration. Otherwise, I will see you next week, same place, same time. Bye-bye.